Welcoming to the program and got an exciting episode this morning. We're going to talk about editing and all the things that are related to that. The purpose of the Doctor of Digital podcast is for education and inspiration. What I try to do is present people that I think you should hear and people that I'm interested in talking to. The show inspires transformation both in business and life through candid conversations with authors, leaders, and changemakers. We uncover wisdom and practical tools you need to survive. What separates a leader from an authority, and what happens when your book becomes the bridge between the two? Today's guest is Donna Dahl. She spent the last 2 decades empowering executives, entrepreneurs, and high impact professionals to do exactly that. Her coaching doesn't begin with buzzwords or quick right wins. It begins with a question. Are you ready to dream more, do more, and become more? In this conversation, we explore the crucial difference between leadership books written to inspire, develop, and serve others, and authority books written to define your niche, elevate your expertise, and build a platform that extends far beyond the page. For this week, in this episode, what we'll do is you'll talk about Donna's background and her work, and because we understand how important leadership is. Leadership doesn't just happen, it's built, refined, and embodied. And with the right book, your message can empower others to dare, to dream, and to perform at a higher level than ever before. And with that, I want to welcome Donna to the program. How are you doing this morning, Donna?
Oh, thanks for asking, Mac. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Well, I appreciate it. Always people are interested in how you got in the field in the first place because it may not be the most typical thing or what people think of. So tell us your story.
Thanks for asking. You know, I think that there are so many times in our lives when people open doors for us and we don't take a step through, or when people extend an invitation
Hmm.
and we somehow either don't feel ready to accept it or we reject it, maybe because it's not the right time, or we're not worthy, or something like that. But I think it's only fair to recognize the people who have opened doors for me
Hmm.
and who have extended invitations where even I don't know if I exactly felt ready or prepared, but I said yes.
Outstanding.
The There was a professor who had written in a margin in my one of the papers that I wrote when I was doing my master's degree, and she said, Donna, you should be a writer because you
Hmm.
are one. Well, I think my whole persona changed as I continued to read the comments about my paper that she, of course, gave me a top mark for.
Hmm.
Some years later, I was in a car accident, and subsequent to the car accident, I was invited to write an article for a business magazine here in my local area. And I thought to myself, I'm not sure I'm ready. I, I had written a master's degree thesis. Surely I could write 1,000 words. It took me 3 weeks of painstakingly working through sentence after sentence. And my
Hmm.
husband finally said, Send, just send it. And I did. And within 5 minutes, the publisher of the magazine sent back a message that said, Perfect.
Hmm.
I was torn between celebrating the enormous praise that I had received, but fearful that I might not be able to repeat that level of experience. And then, before I could even catch my breath, someone came along and said, there's a book in there. There's a book in there. And I chose denial as the original response. And with the continued challenges, I decided that maybe it was worth making an attempt. And so I did. fast forward 14 months later, I was a self-published author launching a practice as a coach with my book in hand.
Mhm.
And so when I speak from personal experience to say a
Yeah.
book could make the difference for you, I can say I walk the walk, I talk the talk. I've been there, done that, and you can too.
And, it's so instructive to hear that, and I think that's so inspiring for writers and potential writers because you experience all of those things that we all do. Am I good enough? Imposter syndrome, and what do I do? And beating ourselves up over it. And that's where the coach comes in. So I'm curious, when you work with leaders, and could you talk about the leadership and brand building and the development that you do if once you've experienced it yourself, how how do you help others?
Well, helping others begins with something I call readiness and personal belief. Do you believe in yourself strongly enough that you are the leader to lead this group,
Hmm.
or that you want to become a leader? Do you believe strongly enough that your leadership could bear improving?
Hmm.
I recall a video that I saw. It's up on YouTube with Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google,
Oh,
being
sure.
interviewed, and he was being encouraged to have a coach, and he went, "No, I don't need a coach. I don't need a coach." And eventually, he did accept the advice to have a coach,
Hmm.
and he worked with that coach for some considerable time as he completed his work as a CEO. In fact, he went on to say that everybody needs a coach. You know, throughout our education system, those there are those in the class who would never be thought of as needing tutorial help. But what if we thought of education as being the opportunity for everyone to have individual guidance, individual attention, according to their own speed, according to their own strengths, and according to their own way of looking at the world? Wouldn't that be something? And so when I'm speaking to your listeners, as I'm saying, don't you deserve to have someone, some personal person in your court who
Hmm.
coaches you, who is your cheerleader, who walks you through the difficult places where you don't have to do everything by trial and error? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, as a recovering academic, I can relate because I always thought, yes, wouldn't it be nice to have personalized education? And I think that's the dream of education, but unfortunately, most of us do not. Excuse me. So what we look for is that's where the coach comes in. And I also say I relate to the fact that I always wanted to play basketball. I'm too short. I'm only 6'2", but boy, I really needed a coach because the coach would make me so much better because despite my limitations, there was somebody else on the side objectively who was pointing out all the good pointers and things that I needed. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. How do you refine the message of people that you work with?
How do I refine their message?
Yeah, yeah. How do you coach them?
One of the things I do is I listen. I listen to the language. I listen to how people portray themselves. I listen to how people are coming across in terms of their level of confidence, their
Mm.
self-awareness, and their sincere desire to look upon themselves from another perspective. It can take courage, but when you're working in a safe and private and confidential,
Mm.
100% confidential environment, no naysayers, no yaysayers,
Mhm.
nobody praising you for things that you perhaps don't even care about, but somebody who is sincere about your your success, could that make a difference?
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, I can relate because one of the things I do is strategic positioning. And this is something that a lot of people can't grasp because they sometimes take for granted their own background and can say, no, you can really develop a strategy with a book. And I use it as an ROI product. That's how I primarily position myself to say, just like you would invest in anything else. If you're in manufacturing, you're going to invest in capital equipment. Well, this is a way of having a new tool in your toolbox. So, how long have you been editing and how long have you been working with people?
I launched my practice 20 years ago. One of the most significant pieces of my practice was the uh, when I wrote my book, Lessons I Learned from the Tortoise, which is on Amazon, and it displays in chapter by chapter form the way that I approach coaching.
Hmm,
So you
I see.
might be able to read it and gain self empowerment through the reading of the book. Lessons I Learned from the Tortoise is based on Aesop's fable about the tortoise and the hare.
Sure.
And people have found it helpful even without necessarily hiring me as a coach. But what if you as the leader were to be able to create your wisdom, your message in a way that the book became your foundation for your expertise?
And it's also an interesting way and a helpful way if you've been through Forged by the Fire yourself. And I think that's really instructive that when you go through the process, as I have, I wrote a couple of books, dissertation, screenplay, and things like that. So what I was able to do is like, I'm not just talking about the theory, I'm actually saying, no, I've done that. So I can understand. And you try to help people avoid the mistakes that you make, as we all do as early writers.
Yes, and mistakes can be costly. So what if there was a person, whether it's me or whether it's Mick or whether it's someone else, what if there was a person in your life who would hold your hand, who would help you steer the boat in a direction that would serve you, that would support you? That could make all the difference. But there are several parts with respect to manifesting a book.
Okay.
One is the message, and one is what happens after. So while I'm the instrumental person in terms of facilitating the development of that message through the manuscript development process, it's just the first step.
I wonder if you could address one of those common questions that people ask, and this is the whole publishing, and I think maybe that's you're hinting at because it's what do you do when you're done with the text, and that's also a process you have to think about, and that's the traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, self-publishing. Maybe you could address those things and tell us more about what happens after the work is done.
Well, lots of times people will take a moment to celebrate the fact that the manuscript is completed. Wonderful. If you're working with me, we've already completed the editing process. But if you're working with someone else, I strongly advise that you hire an editor to to go through your work with you, someone who can give you an objective opinion on the matter. But you know, if you were writing this manuscript, you had to have started with a why. You had to have, like, why are you writing this? Are you writing this so that you can hand it out to family and friends at Christmas time to say, rah rah, I did this?
Mhm.
Or are you wanting to develop a fan base? Are you wanting to develop a private practice? Are you wanting to be a speaker? Are you wanting to create courses, holding webinars? webinars and so on online, there has to be a why
Mm.
that you're doing this, because that also connects to what's the audience you want to reach. So if you're wanting to use this as some realm of foundation so that you can climb the corporate ladder, and that the things that you want to incorporate into your leadership legacy are able to be practiced within a corporate system, that's another why. So know your why. And if you're not sure of it, even to start with, as we work through the first few chapters, your why will come. It's not that you need to know everything up front, firsthand, because the experience of writing a book is a journey of evolution. And one of the things that I tell my writers is that with my background in psychology, I am able to support my writers as they traverse that journey of growth and development through the manifestation of a manuscript.
Do you get people that are saying, I just want to have my name on a book, and like you gave the example of giving it out at holidays and things like that? Because I think there are people who find a great deal of satisfaction in just doing that.
And that's so important. That is so important. The reason being that since the creation of that thing called a blog, we, as a population in this world, we're able to give ourselves permission to write without having a publisher.
Mm.
And so, if you are interested in writing, for instance, your family history,
Yeah.
in terms of providing that legacy to go forward, whether it's a collection of grandma's recipes or whether it's a historical account that takes us all the way back to Elizabethan England, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. The point is that what you have to say will be in print, will be recorded. It doesn't have to be online and omnipresent. It doesn't have to have an ISBN. It doesn't need to appear in Google Books. It can be your piece that you have written, and that you can say, I've written a book.
And I imagine, and maybe you could address this point too, since you've been doing this for 20 years, and that's the whole what has happened over the last 20 years, because I think you put out something so really insightful. You really don't even need a publisher. But what has happened over the last 20 years, and this has to do with that old like traditional publishing, hybrid, and self-publishing.
Going after a publisher means going after someone who wants to partner with you with respect to the work that you have accomplished. And so, while a lot of people want to be published by one of the top publishing houses in the world, that is not necessarily going to happen. You may prefer to look for a publisher that specializes in your genre.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping in mind that when a publisher publishes, they own the ISBN of your book. And so you, depending on the contract, may lose the intellectual property rights to what you have put into the book. In order to protect the intellectual property rights, purchase your own ISBN. Or if you live in a country where you don't have to purchase it, get your own ISBN. It is like the VIN, the vehicle identification number on your car, and it identifies your book as yours. That ISBN also indicates whether you have, whether the version is an ebook, an audiobook, a book
Mhm.
in print, a book with a hardcover. Each ISBN designates the book that it is. Hybrids. Can you do hybrids? Well, I'll let you speak more to that, Mick. You probably have more knowledge about that than I do. But as far as self-publishing goes, it's really a very, very easy matter these days with respect to the limited skills that you need and the availability of the options to put the book out there, whether you're just putting it on your website and selling it from there through an e-commerce program, or whether you are selling it through Amazon. There's or some other platform, Kobo, for instance. So be mindful of the form that you want your book to take. Some never put their book in print anymore. They only do it as an audiobook.
Yeah.
So, will I coach people in how to read? Yes. Because if you want to read your own book, you want to come across as the authority of your own book. And that's there are ways to read, and there are ways that are not to read. So we can work on that too. When it comes to editing, Rilo Kin wrote The Dragon's Flute, and I am so pleased that he chose to list me as the editor of his book. It's a fantasy. It's not a nonfiction. It's over 100,000 words, and it is a beautiful, beautiful book. I'm so honored to have been invited into his world in order to facilitate his desire to go forward and be published. I He is currently doing the second in the trilogy series that he's created.
And one other point on the publishing side, because you have some really impressive background and people that you work with, could you address the self-publishing option or the audio only? Because you had mentioned, so what are the advantages then of self-publishing?
Well, Dr. Suhaya Abu Hakama approached me to be her manuscript coach to develop her book. She's self-published, and she's using her book in support of her speaking engagements. The for her to be self-published, I think was an important step for her to take, because being a successful AI tech entrepreneur, completing 2 successful exits, one is important for her to keep her intellectual property in her court.
Yeah.
So people say, well, is the book worth as much if it's self-published? Well, I think that depends how you market it. I think that goes back to what's your why in terms of creating this document. It is a legal document. It with an ISBN, it is a legal document, and so treasure your why. Treasure your why.
And in terms of post text, the marketing, what would you recommend? Because a lot of people would think, especially if you're publishing, things might fly off the shelf, but maybe they don't. So what would you say in terms of the post text process about the marketing and where the book goes after you finish?
Well, that's a great question, Mick. Some people think that editors can do it all, or that manuscript coaches can do it all, and that's not the case. There are, there are people who specialize in just simply changing the tires on your car. They would never ever think about doing your oil change. Their job is changing your tires. I'm not necessarily the marketing expert. I will give people basic information with respect to marketing, like getting your persona identified as an author on social media. If you don't show up on social media as an author, where is your authority coming from? So that's a really key part. I mean, what do you do when somebody says, "Hey, you really got to buy ABC"? Well, the first thing you do is you go to Google and you go, "What's ABC and how does it rate and what are the reviews?" And people want to know this. So we can go through a beta reading process. We can go through a gathering the nitty-gritty basics that help to give your book some solid support. But if you want somebody who's a real marketing guru to help you sell 1,000 copies, you need to hire the guy who does the oil change for the car. You need to hire somebody who is going to push that process for you. Or perhaps you need to join a speakers bureau in order to be able to gain access to opportunities to speak about your book, in support of your book, or lessons from your book.
We've covered a lot of ground, like how you got into the business in the first place and some of the things that you have done and your process. As we begin to wrap up, I'm wondering then, because you've mentioned some of your own background, your own book, your own background, and of course, how do people get a hold of you? I think that would be instructive. Where do they get your books? Where do they get to know you a little bit better?
Oh, thanks for your question. I'm Donna Dahl on LinkedIn. DonnaDahl, just like it's spelled here on the screen. And a good way to get a hold of me is to direct message me on LinkedIn. If you want to read more about my books and some of the authors that I've helped, I'm donnapdahl.com. Just put a P in the middle of Donna and Dahl and .com, and you'll find me there. The research me by all means. Research the authors that I have been more than blessed to have been able to work with. Feel free to get a hold of Lessons I Learned from the Tortoise on Amazon. The reviews that I've received are heartwarming at the very least, and in some cases have brought tears to my eyes. I'm honored and thrilled to work with people who are genuinely interested in getting their message out and making a difference. I thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate you taking out some time and telling us about all the important work that you're doing. So I'm much obliged for your time and your expertise. So thank you. I appreciate it. And good luck and good success in all that you do.
Thank you.
You bet. So with that, of course, I'm always interested in helping people and inspiring them and also getting them somewhere else where they would get to go. So I also have a couple volumes on Amazon. That's Burning America and also On Track, Ian Hunter. I want to thank the publishers for all their support of the program and the podcast. I appreciate that. If you want to reach out to me, it's Write the Book and Grow Your Business on LinkedIn, G. Mick Smith, the Doctor of Digital, and also, of course, listen to the podcast, of course, as well. I really appreciate that for your time. Hopefully you got some more good episodes coming up, because that's my intention. Until next time, this is the Doctor of Digital signing off. Deus Volt.